Hello and welcome to Food for the Journey, a weekly program of St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Aberdeen, Maryland. I'm Pastor Robert Blezard and I'm glad you could join us for a few minutes of devotion. It is Thursday, the 23rd of June, 2022, and we are continuing our exploration of the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments, of course, are recorded twice in the 5 books of Moses, known as the Pentateuch or the Torah, in the book of Exodus and the book of Deuteronomy. Now, these aren't the only laws that we have in the Pentateuch, but they're the laws that were first spoken by the Lord our God when Moses met with God up on top of Mount Sinai, and they're the only ones that were carved in stone. They're certainly worth taking a look. Today we're looking at the 7th commandment according to the Lutheran numbering of commandments, and I'm reading here from Exodus chapter 20. Verse 14. Okay, you ready? I'm going to take a deep breath. Here you go. Do not commit adultery. 4 words. Do not commit adultery. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, on the surface, it seems very simple. It means that when we're married, we don't share our bed with anyone who is not our spouse. And that's a good place to start, but it goes so much deeper than that. Let's look at some of the broader context of the Ten Commandments, and that is that all of them, from 1 to 10, all refer to those 2 commandments that Jesus gave us. Remember in the Gospels how they came to Jesus, and one wise guy, a Pharisee, said, Jesus, which of the laws are most important? Because they had actually figured out, and they counted, there was something like 600 and some odd laws that they expected they'd have to follow in order to be a righteous Jewish person. Which of these is most important? He asked Jesus, and Jesus gave him 2. The first one he said is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, everything you've got. And the second one is, love your neighbor as yourself. So all of the 10 commandments refer to those 2 big commandments. Well, what does not committing adultery have to do with loving the Lord our God? Well, remember that it was the Lord our God who created human beings and structured our society in certain ways. And God is the one who set apart marriage of all human relationships. You know, we have friends, we have associates, we have acquaintances, we have business partners. All of those are wonderful. We also have family relationships. You know, we have brothers and sisters and parents and children and cousins and whatever. But God has set apart this one nucleus between 2 people for a certain purpose. And the purpose is that when the 2 people in a marriage are healthy and strong, the family is strong. Well, what are some of the things that make a marriage strong? Well, a marriage is entered into with faithfulness and commitment and a pledge to be monogamous. And a marriage is publicly accountable. People should be able to see how the marriage is going. People who are friends and family, we are publicly accountable for our marriages. So when a marriage is healthy, the family becomes healthy. And healthy marriages produce healthy children that go on and produce healthy children. And so it is that human society is preserved by ensuring the health of the nucleus of families, 2 married people. And what we know is that adultery is something that can destroy a marriage. It is a violation of commitment. It is a violation of faithfulness. It is a violation of trust. It is a violation of respect. And many marriages that encounter infidelity, adultery, don't last. They cannot survive it. And even though sometimes they do, and the partners go on to have healthier relationships and the kids can recover, God intends that marriages would be lifelong and publicly accountable and monogamous. So certainly adultery, do not commit adultery means we don't share our bed with anyone who is not our spouse. But also, there are other aspects of intimacy that happen between two married people that are reserved only for them. Part of it is emotional. When I'm in an emotional relationship with my spouse, I reserve and I give to my spouse that part of me that is most intimate and the core of who I am. And I pledge to my spouse trust and deep commitment. And when we bring somebody else into our marriage and we reveal to that person and give to that person our inmost selves, and we have this bond between us that is this emotional connection that should be reserved for marriage, and that is also committing adultery. It's emotional adultery. It's spiritual adultery. And marriage experts will tell us that sometimes when people form an emotional bond outside of marriage with someone else, that can be as destructive as a physical encounter of infidelity. So part of don't commit adultery means you work hard at it and you make sure that you're giving all the things that belong to your spouse only. And you don't look left or right. You're not tempted to give those parts to anyone else. So it goes just beyond sharing a bed. But part of it also is human sexuality. What's human sexuality for? Well, first of all, God created us as sexual creatures, and part of our emotional and physical well-being is that we have an expression. We have a means of expression for our sexuality, which is so important and hardwired into most of us. And Paul himself said in his letter to the Corinthians, said, it's better to be married than to burn with lust. So in other words, marriage is the place where our sexual selves can find expression in a healthy way. And we reserve our sexual expression for that union with our spouse. And one of the reasons is that sex is more than just a mere pleasure. It's just something that can link two people emotionally and spiritually as well as physically. And Genesis 2, chapter 2, verse 24 says that when people get married, they become one flesh. And sexual intimacy is one way that we become connected in a special way with our spouse. And to engage in sex with someone who's not our spouse is to cheapen that gift and to share it with someone who's in an inappropriate way. So sexual expression in marriage is very strong. So for all those reasons, we are taught, do not commit adultery. And what we need to understand also is that, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, said, you have heard it said, do not commit adultery, but I tell you, if someone looks with a lustful eye upon someone else, they have already committed adultery with them in their own mind. So part of it is that to be someone who is faithful in marriage and not commit adultery is to watch your eyes, watch your thoughts. Why is that? Because, Jesus knew that when we look at someone with a lustful eye, that we've already committed adultery. We've already let that adulterous thought arise in our mind and in our heart. And that's bad. It is from the heart that all of our sin comes. So what we are to do is to turn away from things that would distract us. Martin Luther, when he looked around at his 16th century, he was appalled because he saw that there was temptation all around. There was rampant prostitution and there was immorality of all sorts, sexual immorality. And he thought, this is an abomination. How can people live in close relationships when they're tempted to commit adultery all over the place? Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what Martin Luther would think of in our own day and age when we are saturated with sexual temptation. Not just pornography, as bad as that is, but you watch any TV, romantic comedy, or any show, and what happens on the first or second date? People are in bed already, and it's like, is that appropriate? No, it's not appropriate. It's not a good use of the gift that God gave us of sexuality. So we are to turn from those temptations and turn all of our attention for emotional and spiritual and physical intimacy. We are to direct all of that energy to our spouse, where it belongs. And when we do, we have a healthy marriage. And when we have a healthy marriage, we raise healthy families. And when we have a society of healthy families, we have a healthy society. So that is the seventh commandment. Do not commit adultery. I hope this has been edifying. I encourage your comments and feedback, and please talk to me if you have any other issues. And join us next week. We'll be looking at do not bear false witness against your neighbor, otherwise known as you shall not lie. That's a real biggie. Hope to see you next week, and may God bless you.